So by trade, I am a chiropractor, but I've also been lifting for over a decade in my own time. I've been done weightlifting, powerlifting, calisthenics, and just mixing all them together. So what is soreness? Now here's the kicker. We don't actually know what soreness is. The research has varied throughout the years. Initially, we all thought it was muscle breakdown, where when you're working out and those micro tears in your muscles are the ones that cause soreness. But then a study was done where they actually just did micro tears by beating up the muscles themselves, and no soreness was found. Not the same soreness that you would get from working out. So that one was out. Another thought was, well, what if it was just stimulus? Well, they were close, but not exactly. Because muscle growth stimulus doesn't have to be through concentric exercises. Either they can also be through isometric exercises or even just eating. Or if you know that one famous study where they injected steroids, the muscles grew even just with steroid injections. But essentially, fundamentally, soreness is a result or a reaction to new stimulus. Now, when you feel sore, what do you feel? It feels uncomfortable, it feels a bit of painful. Pain is not an indicator of damage. Pain, and in this case, in this context, soreness, is a sign of, it's a warning sign. That's all it is. When your body does not know what something is or what stimulus you have received, it will just label it as pain to keep you safe because it doesn't know what it is. You can think of it like, for example, you can think of it like when you first step on stage in front of a crowd. It's not going to damage you or anything, but you still get that stage fright, even though you know objectively it's not going to do anything to you. It's not going to physically harm you. It might emotionally harm you, but it doesn't physically harm you. But you still get that stage fright, that fear. It's the same thing with the body when it comes to pain. Most of the time, pain is not an indicator of actual damage. It's just a warning signal that something is wrong or it thinks something is wrong. Anyway, so that's basically what soreness is. But what soreness is not, and this is, I'm going to put a reminder of this later on, it is not an indicator of a good workout. Repeat after me. Soreness is not a good indicator of a good workout. Hear me out. So we, and by we I mean the scientific community in the research space, believes that soreness is just a result of a stimulus. And that stimulus is, if we take this as an example, concentric exercises. If we take the bicep or tricep, when you contract it, this is in a stretch position, you contract it and it shortens. Now doing this shortening and lengthening of the muscle under load, say, under resistance, is something new. Especially if you've never worked out or if you haven't worked out in a long time and your body is not used to that. Again, because it is strenuous and strenuous exercise, as far as your body is concerned, you suddenly have to exert yourself. Out of nowhere, you suddenly have to exert yourself. So when that happens, essentially your body believes that you are in danger. So it sends this pain signal or this soreness signals the next day to warn you, hey, you need to be careful. Whatever caused you to do this, it was something dangerous. You need to be careful with it. Probably avoid it. Which is kind of ironic because if you think about way back in the day in the medieval or even past, if we go by evolutionary beliefs, that why am I feeling sore if I'm in danger? Wouldn't that only hinder me and my ability to escape if I'm in so much physical pain from exerting that one time to trying to escape a predator or anything? But I digress. Anyway, so your body feels sore. Anyway, so your body thinks you're in danger, but you know you're not in danger. You just started exercising. So that way, at least up here, you know that this is good for you. You just need to power through it. Sort of. There's actually a way to minimize the onset of soreness when you first start working out. and it is to isometrics, specifically a type of isometrics that has been coined on the internet as overcoming isometrics. So what do we know of isometrics? So earlier, when I shortened the bicep or lengthen it, this is called a concentric. If you go from shortening and lengthening under resistance, that is eccentrics. Isometrics is essentially this, the in-between, where you're trying to hold something against resistance. Now you can do that. For example, the one that's most common that people know of is just a plank. That is an isometric. But just holding something is not enough of a stimulus. It can be, especially for abs, but for general muscles where we can actually move, the better approach is actually overcoming isometrics or overwhelming isometrics. Basically what that is, so isometrics are when you're holding something, you have to squeeze it, right? But if you exert more force, you would be able to overcome it. See, I can actually pull it apart. I'll actually use this window as an example. We'll do it with tricep pushdowns. So, assuming that I am doing an isometric, it's me just holding it here, and I'm just holding it. But if I exert more force, I'll be able to contract it. And that's where the difference is when it comes to an overcoming isometric. You want to actually, and this is actually better done in the gym because you have more equipment and more setups for various angles and everything. You would do an overcoming isometric where the weight is so heavy that no matter how much force you exert, it's not strong enough. But you get the idea. Let's see. How do I make this harder? Let's make it harder like this. Okay. This is still movable, but just imagine if I can't move this at all, like this. And I'm trying to extend my arm, but I can't. That is an overcoming isometric. You're not supposed to, despite the name, you're not supposed to actually be able to move it, no matter how much force you exert in. The reason for that is because you're able to stimulate your body, introduce it to the stimulus of exertion without actually causing enough strenuous effort. For example, when you're trying to overcome an isometric and exert as much force as you can, you are technically energy-wise exerting a lot of force. But because the muscle and the joint is not going through any range of motion, by as far as your body is concerned, it isn't damaging enough for you to actually feel sore the next day. So if you were to use this, you would use it for a bunch of other muscles. For example, a cable fly, you would do all the way up here, put a weight that's super heavy where you can't move and you just have to hold it here, and then do that for like 5 to 10 seconds, move it closer to an angle here, and then squeeze here. It's fine. You can do this for all the muscles, even your legs. So why does this? Well, it doesn't necessarily prevent soreness, but it heavily mitigates the feeling of soreness the next day. Because like I mentioned earlier, you're able to exert a lot of force and introduce a huge stimulus of exertion, but without quote-unquote causing damage to your body, or perceived damage or perceived harm to your body that your body would think is damaging and would cause this feeling of soreness all over. I recommend doing this for about 1 or 2 gym sessions, just that. 1 or 2 gym sessions only doing overcoming isometrics. Whether on a lat pull down, right at the edge, pulling as hard as you can, here pulling as hard as you can, and then finally here just squeezing as hard as you can. Just do that for 5 to 10 seconds, 1 or 2 sets for all the general body parts, and you're good to go. Do that for about 2 gym sessions, and you should, by the 3rd gym session, be able to do full workouts, full concentric workouts. resistance workouts, whether that's body weight or even with weights. But I do heavily recommend you do this with weights, or at the very least machines or cables, because it's pretty hard to do with body weight only, or even with home equipment like a band, because the resistance has to be really high, and just the easiest way to add really high resistance at a good angle, at a practical training angle, is just to add more weight to it. So what else? How to minimize? Despite that, why can it also happen again? Soreness, I mean. Why can it happen again even if you've already worked out regularly? Two things. You've overexerted yourself, hence again your body, as far as concerned, is reintroduced to a new dangerous stimulus, or you're under recovering. And under recovering can either be from lack of sleep or lack of good sleep, nutrition, or maybe you're just training really hard and prepping for a show or a competition. I guess. So does this actually matter? It can, but if you're the type who just can power through the soreness, go for it. Again, it's not an indicator of a good workout, and it's not exactly an indicator of effort, but you can use it as an indicator of effort. Not the best, but it is there. A better indicator of effort is if you were to actually track your workouts or your goals or your numbers. That's much better, and it's much more consistent, because soreness is a feeling, and if you just go based off feelings, based off vibes, you're not exactly tracking things and making sure you're actually progressing linearly or clearly in a way. That being said, this only matters if you're trying to do this for a goal. Speaking of goals, people overestimate or underappreciate the whole concept of a goal. Let me get this straight. As a chiropractor, and after all the patients I've worked with, 99% of people do not care about a goal. They really don't. Let me explain. A goal for me, for someone who's been working out and training, or have the experience I have, a goal for me is something like hitting a 4-plate deadlift or a 4-plate squat. Sorry, 4-plate deadlift is very easy. It's a 4-plate squat. Something, because I suck at squats, but a 4-plate squat is something clear, concise, and objective. Bigger arm measurements or tighter waist for exact measurements, for example 18-inch arms, maybe 16-inch forearms, something like that. That is a measurable, clear goal, which the majority of people do not have. The majority of people, including yourself maybe, when you start out the gym or when you start working out, you have super general goals. Your goals are either to just be healthier, feel better, maybe look a bit better, lose a bit of weight, etc., etc., etc. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that, and I actually encourage that, because when you first start something out, you don't really know what you like about it or what you want to do. So when I say go and stick to a generalized goal, stick to it. Don't worry about the minutia. Don't worry about the most optimized sleep schedule. Don't worry about the most optimized training schedule, the most optimized workout, the best bicep workout, the best back workout, the best pull-ups, the best whatever, or supplement stack, whatever. Don't worry about any of that thing. Starting from 0 to something, even if it's 1, is still 100% increase. Then adding 2 is still 50%, I think. Yes. All that does affects you a lot more than you think. And don't try to change your entire lifestyle. It's not a thing where you can just flip a switch and change. If it was that easy, more people would do it, trust me. More people would do it. And a lot more people would be much easier to convince to start exercising than you would think. But start small. No, smaller. Even smaller than you think. Because what I want to talk about now is actually touch you on about a psychological concept that I need to Google, and I forgot the name. There's a special name for it, but it is essentially called the unsatisfactory loop. Okay, I found it. It is called the Zeigarnik effect, which is essentially a unsatisfied loop. So according to this AI overview from Google, it describes the human tendency to remember incomplete or interrupted tasks and loops far better than completed ones. So how do we use this to get you to start working out? It's simple. I actually made a TikTok about this a few days ago. When I say start small, I mean start small. How small? Do 1 push-up a day. That's it. That's it. If it really gets to you, which it will, do 1 push-up every few hours. Maybe 1 push-up 3 times a day on separate days. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and then 1 late at night. Why does this work? And I can tell you it works really well. Because people hate feeling unsatisfied a lot more than they feel motivated or feel satisfied. Think about it like this. You go to a restaurant, you're eating, but then you don't get full. What happens then? You feel like you gotta eat something else. Maybe you go for a walk and you find like a donut stall on the side, like a Dunkin' Donuts, and you just impulsively order one because you're still hungry, it's still not satisfied. Or something more relatable, maybe TV shows. Now, I haven't watched Game of Thrones at all, but I heard season 8 was absolutely horrible, that the internet went insane over it. So what does that tell you? Season 8 was unsatisfactory and people were so hung up about it, right? Well, that's the goal with this. Do something, an exercise that's you could have done more of, but then you start feeling super unsatisfied with it. That's why just start with 1 push-up. And if you can't do a push-up on the floor, you can just do an angled push-up, maybe push-ups for your knees, or push-up against the wall, anything that lets you do 1 full rep, full range of motion, or even just 1 squat, even just 1 bicep curl, or just 1 tricep extension. Anything that gets you unsatisfied, because what happens is that you feel unsatisfied that you want to do it again. You want to do it to a point where you feel satisfied. Now, fair warning, working out based on feelings is not the go-to long term, but forget about any of that. This is just to get you started, just to get you hooked. Because once it becomes a habit, it becomes so much easier to live with. The problem with people who don't exercise or who struggle with exercise is that they find it difficult to put it in their lives. But once something becomes a habit, it becomes as natural as breathing, as natural as waking up and brushing your teeth, setting up your bed, cooking, wearing socks, anything. It doesn't become a hassle. It just becomes a part of you, a part of your life. And that's the goal here. Be unsatisfied with an exercise, and then slowly but surely, you will make it a habit. You will crave it because you crave completing the loop. Once you get there, it is so much easier. Just do something simple, something super simple. Even these things that we do on the floor, like against the floor you're lying down, and I call this like just absolute cinema, but the goal is to squeeze your back as tight as you can, because it's not a lot of people at home have anything to work with when it comes to actually doing back workouts. But you get the point. Find something that's super easy to do that you could have done more of. Don't do more of. Do something so little that you feel unsatisfied, and let that dissatisfaction live inside you, seep inside you. And then eventually, as the day goes by, maybe you can add another rep, add another rep, add another rep. And then when you get to your max reps for a single set, then you can start adding another set. And then eventually, you'll start seeing that you made changes. And then once those changes happen, you get that hook, that feeling of, I can actually do this, I can change. I've seen my biceps go, I've seen my legs go, I feel stronger, anything, I feel better. And that gets you hooked on another thing. So you've gotten hooked through dissatisfaction, now you're getting hooked through satisfaction to seeing the delayed gratification actually come to fruition. Do that, and you will stick to working out, I promise you. And if you ever fall off, ever again, maybe with this whole new virus thing and everyone gets locked out again on lockdowns in their homes and you can't work out at the gym anymore, just do this, but do it at home. Always start small and even smaller than you think. If you fall off again, start over again, and you'll eventually start back up again. And plus, the best thing is that it actually gets easier the more you do it. Even if you fall off again, because you've done it before, starting exercise again is like a piece of cake. It's kind of like learning to ride a bike again, even though you've already known how to ride a bike. Something like that. So to summarize, soreness, back to the soreness topic, soreness is not an indicator of damage and it's not an indicator of a good workout, but it can be used as an indicator of good effort, at the very least, at the very minimum. There are ways to mitigate it through overcoming isometric, so that if you're starting working out and you don't want to be held back by that soreness that you get the next day, do some overcoming isometrics at the gym, overwhelming isometrics, whatever you want to call it. Just do that for 1 or 2 sets for 2 sessions, and then you can start your full workouts, and you should feel less sore by a large margin to keep continuing working out. Now, if you want to start out small, you can also do that as well. Maybe just the overcoming isometrics just to get you hooked in. And then when you start, you maybe just do 1 set of like 5 reps of everything. And then you start being consistent. If you find difficulty with going to the gym because the friction is just massive for you, start at home, start with calisthenics, start with body weight, anything. The whole goal is just to start. Once you start and got that snowball rolling, it gets so much easier. So I know I've diverted a bit in this one, but I just wanted to get that out there. I'm sore, it sucks, I know it sucks, it feels horrible. You really get stuck staying in bed, you just want to stay in bed all day. But just power through it if you're already sore. If you're not, you can mitigate it, and if you find difficulty in starting to work out again, start small, but start. Bye-bye. Also, my name is Shahmi.